A while ago, I analyzed some of Astrix tracks, and today I want to show you some of the structuring tricks that he uses and how to implement them in your own project. So this is the project that we're going to be taking a look at today. This is a production that I haven't really touched for quite a while now, but I do think that it's a fairly interesting production and I do hope to one day finish it. So this is the project that we're going to be taking a look at today. We're mainly going to be focusing on the structure track here. And if you have been following my channel and specifically my videos on arrangement, you'll notice immediately that there's something strange going on. Let's compare it to a typical sidetrance arrangement. Here above I have a standard arrangement from a different track that I'm working on, and as you can see, when it comes to kind of normal full-on sidetrance, what you'll find is that you're going to have an intro, some long drop element, a break somewhere with usually some kind of build-up, and then you're going to have another drop and then an outro and a fade-out. As you can see, this is not really the case for the track that we're currently working on. We do have the basic elements of it in the sense that we have an intro, we have some drops in here, we have a breakdown, some more drops, and then an outro. But you can see that sporadically in between there's fills and other build-ups and other things that aren't really a drop. What you'll also notice is that it's a lot less tied to the grid. Let's make another MIDI track so that I can show that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make some 8-bar clips here. 1 and 2, and I'll color them alternating like this, and then just duplicate that over. And what we'll find is that here, every element kind of lines up with one of the starts or the ends of one of these clips. Just scrolling through it, you can see that this lines up. Right here, the fill is considered part of this drop, so this part lines up here. This part lines up here. And that just kind of continues for the rest of all of the drops. They all line up and they're all parts of 16 bars long. Even the breakdown in this case is 24 bars long. As you can see, we have 16 bars here, and then we get another 8 bars from the third clip here. And that lines up exactly with what is going on in the breakdown here. And continuing here, we have 7 bars of build-up and then 1 bar of fill, meaning that the total section lines up with 8 bars. And again, you can see the trend continuing in that everything just lines up with what is going on in this track over here. Now, before we continue, I do quickly want to say that if you want to support the channel, you can do so by liking the video and making sure that you're subscribed. Also, if you want to support me financially, you can do so by checking out my products on Gumroad, including sample packs, preset packs, and my masterclass. Or checking out my Patreon page where you'll get benefits like early access to videos, priority in feedback streams, and many more benefits. Links for both of them are going to be in the description. With that being said, let's get back into the video. Now for this other track here, you can see that that is also the case at the beginning here. You can see that there's a lot of things that do line up with our track over here. But once we go a little bit later, you'll see that we start to strafe away from it, and specifically more towards this part here. As you can see, there are some sections where we're strafing away from this idea of keeping in line with the 8-bar sections here. Specifically, this is done through some fills here. In this case, if we take this part and line it up like this, you'll still see that our rule holds here. Obviously, now this whole part is kind of shifted away by 2 bars, which is exactly the length of this fill here. But that does mean that we are a little bit more liberal in how we place elements and how we use the timings in our track. And this brings us to our first rule of this kind of production, and that is to use the music as a guide for the structuring, as opposed to using the structuring as a guide for the music. What I used to do for a long time is I would write out sections before I even knew what kind of elements were going in there. I would write out the kick and bass and the drums, and that would allow me to fill it in later with the actual elements that were going in there. Now this does allow you to get a very well-structured track, and usually I do recommend this style of writing. But when you want to be a little bit more flexible with the structure, it might be nice to first lay down the elements that you really want, the main sequences that you really want, and then kind of build the track around that, if that makes sense. So let's just dive into this little segment here and see how it was written. I started off with this kick and bass here with all of the drums. Obviously this is already the finished track, so you have to imagine it without all of the other elements in there. And then came the main sequences that sounded like this. Now from here, at some point I wanted to transition into a rolling kick and bass for this track. I didn't want to spend the whole track with the same kick and bass groove here. So this is where I decided that I needed a build-up and I needed something to transition into that rolling kick and bass. The way that I'm doing that is by keeping the sequence in there and kind of extending this drop into the build-up. As you can see, there's not even a fill here. There's nothing that is suggesting that something is about to happen. and it just transforms into the build-up, and then it goes into the rolling kick and bass.
It's time to understand that if you want to get something out of your life, you got to work for it.
Now that's just one transition, but I'm doing this all over the place. If we zoom out a little bit more, what you'll see in the structure is that, as I said, there's one here, there's one here, there's one over here, there's one more here. There's a lot of these little segments happening that isn't technically part of the drop, but it's not really like a fill or a breakdown or something like that. In the sense that the elements that are contained, for example, in this segment of the drop here, just kind of continue in this part over here. So just again to explain it, what is happening here is that we have this element in here, which is just this kind of impact one shot. And that just continues into this little breakdown segment that we have together with the kick and the bass, but the kick and bass are being filtered in this case. So what that means is that the feeling of the drop really continues because your main elements still exist and your kick and bass still exist in this case. They're just filtered out there a little bit lower, and they're already kind of preparing the listener for the next segment that is about to come. In this case, what I'm doing is I have this melodic element over here. And what this does is it announces what the bass line is about to do next. As you can see, the bass line over here is just kind of going up in the normal way. And then as soon as we go into this segment here, there's actually this extra note change here towards the last part of this 2-bar segment here that is changed up, that is different. Now in the bass line, you don't really hear it here because it's so filtered, but what you do hear is this melody kind of coming in. And then once the bass line comes in back here, you really hear it in the bass line as well. Now you'll see that there's other spots where I do have normal fills, and in this way we're also transitioning from one element to the other. In this case we're transitioning from a whole bunch of one-shots in this element that is coming in here, and there's also this one kind of lead kind of coming up here that is also helping with the transitioning. So you can hear that this is just a normal fill. Which means that in terms of structure, we have this alternating idea here where we have a normal fill here, and then we have this very prolonged 8-bar segment here, which is more of like a build-up. I do like to think about it as a fill, not in the traditional sense, in that it really closes the segment, because as I said before, this segment doesn't really close, it just kind of morphs into whatever this next part is here. But this does have the same functionality in that we're taking out the old elements and we're bringing in the new elements. Here's another version of that same idea. We have some very cool grid synths in here that I'm then morphing up into a more kind of gated sound. And you can hear that we're again using this little segment here to just do that transitioning. In this case, we're using a segment of 4 bars that fitted the track a little bit better than having another 8-bar segment over here. What's also cool is that temporarily here, you cannot really see it in the actual bassline MIDI itself when we're just looking at it like this. But this bassline part actually has a different groove than any of the other basslines in here. This is another trick that I wanted to talk about, in the sense that if you keep the bassline always the same, it's going to get boring very, very soon. So I'm using bass melodies every once in a while. As you can see, here is a bass melody. Here the bass has a little bit of a melody, just this one note kind of going up there. But here you can hear that the bass line really does something different in terms of its groove. You can hear that it's very, very subtle. It's still technically like a rolling bass line. It's just that the first note for this, and this clip is a lot lower in velocity and therefore in volume, and therefore you get this kind of more pumping effect. Now, as I said, this just helps make everything stand out a lot more. One of the other things that helps everything standing out a lot more is having unique sequences. When it comes to my sequences, as you can see, there's barely anything that repeats. We do have some parts that repeat, mainly over here, for example, this one repeats. But you'll see that for most sequences, I start them up, I use them once, and then I stop them again. And then the next sequence comes in, and then the next sequence comes in, and then the next sequence comes in. The same is true for one-shots. If we look at the one-shots, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of one-shots that are unique to one section, that really just belong in one part, or maybe in this case in two parts here. You can see another good example here. These are very specific to this segment and I never use them again. And what this means is that every segment of the track is going to sound very, very unique. This is something that I noticed fairly early on in Astrix's productions, in that it seems that he tailor-makes all of his one-shots and all of the sequences for the specific part of the track and never really uses them again. The final really interesting thing that I'm doing in terms of the structure is the length of the breakdown. One, the breakdown is fairly long, as you can see. But two, as you can see, we're basically taking up 1, 2, 3, 4.5 of these 8-bar segments here. Now, part of this is still kind of transitioning out of the drop. As you can hear at this point, the kick and bass is just kind of morphing out. And really the main breakdown is this section over here, but this is actually 20 bars and still like a very non-standard length for structure element. The same is kind of true for the build-up. As I said before, there's this extra fill in here that just adds a little bit of extra suspense to this part. What normally would be the case is that the fill is integrated into the build-up itself. So you would, for example, have this part be the build-up and then this part be the fill, and then your drop would start right here, so that the combination of the build-up and the fill would be one segment of 16 bars. In this case though, it is 18 bars, and that just adds a little bit of extra suspense, because as humans we are very used to this kind of structuring. We know it very well, we can kind of count it, and just having a little bit of extra space here adds a little bit of extra suspense to this part of the track, and this is what that sounds like. You can kind of hear it almost has to come, it almost has to be there, and then it just does a little bit of extra and then it goes into the drop. So that was everything that I wanted to talk about today. I hope that you found it interesting and that you can apply it to your own music. But that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.
It's impossible to tell.